My God, that guy can rabbit on. You know what I wish these YouTubers offered as advice? I wish they said, do not like, do not subscribe, delete your account, shut it down. Life doesn't happen by watching other people's experience. Life happens outside. Life happens by allowing yourself to follow what feels true and right for you. Sure, watch people get inspired, get some ideas, but don't become obsessed with that. Allow yourself to roam. Allow yourself, as the B-52 said, to roam around the world, to just explore where your energy wants to take you. This is just me chatting and telling stories about my experiences living and traveling in my van and living and traveling and exploring my own consciousness, exploring all of the crap that goes on in my mind and all of the dreams and hopes and things for the future. And so it can be a long rambling journey that evolves. We're co-creating this. As I talk, I'm making it up. Well, not quite. But it is a little bit nice segue here. It is a little bit about giving rise to something new. Going through those darker moments to come out the other side into the light and see what grows, see what develops. And so, July. What's been happening for me in July? End of the last video, I was in Uluru and had a nice little set of connections. There was a day in Uluru when I was realizing that I was in need of a little bit more human connection. And so I had written in my journal, I was sitting there writing in my journal and sort of recognizing this thought. And I was at the sunset spot and I was taking a time lapse. I had a tripod set up on the roof of the van, taking a time lapse. And so I suddenly thought the surge to jump up and check the time lapse. And as I look out through the skylight, I see these two wedge-tailed eagles flying by, which of course are my sign and spirit animal and guidance and, you know, the thing that makes me pay attention to life. And so I'm sort of following them. And then I look over and parked beside me on a big expedition truck is a lady sitting on the roof watching the sunset as well. And I like, as much, to me, much of the interest of being in somewhere like the sunset spot in Uluru is just sort of seeing how people take it all in as well. So I often take photos of the people taking photos and that sort of thing. And so anyway, I ended up taking a photo of her and she was laughing and we got to chatting afterwards. And she was going to go see the drone show at Uluru, which I was sort of curious about doing, you know, like either the drone show or the dinner or something, but I wasn't sort of like, oh, well, I'm not going to do it on my own. And then I thought, okay, well, you know, I'll know someone, so I might as well go. And so went along to that, which was great. And then on the bus coming back, got to chatting to the lovely, amazing Rana, is a tour guide traveling around. And so we had this great little 5-minute conversation, just really good energy. And And so after Uluru, I was then at Kings Canyon, and I had this, again, one of these sort of little magical nights. The campground at Kings Canyon has a little sunset bar and live music. Great, watching the sunset. And so I had a great conversation with, I think it was Leanne at the sunset bar. And then I thought, I'm going to go and get some dinner, and I'm in the bar having dinner and reading a book. And then Rana pops up again. She'd been sort of done a whole nother tour since I'd last saw her. And so we got to chatting, and she had suggested to me, I was explaining that I was heading towards the Sunshine Coast. And so she gave me a couple of tips about going and seeing Ben and Sarah from New Earth Meta that do breathworks and sound healing. And so last weekend, both Friday night and Saturday night, I went and did that, which was it was incredible. Yeah, it was very on point for what I am exploring and experiencing. And so it's nice when you meet some like-minded woo-woo people that have some similar ideas. And so I guess, in short, what I think that idea is, I've been reading, it's a free book by a guy called Dwayne Elgin, which I came across after I'd listened to an interview that Rick Archer did with him on Buddha at the Gas Pump. And he has a free book called Choosing Earth. And he's sort of got he's thinking about the future, and he's got these three scenarios. And basically all three scenarios over the next sort of, he's sort of got over the next couple of decades, but I think it could be faster than that, is just this collapse of society, life, whatever. It's sort of like a collective dark night of the soul that we as humanity, as all of us, have to go through. We've gone so far down the society and the structure that we've built, and all the systems that we have in place have taken us so far down this path that it's a very difficult thing to change. Obviously, the people in power don't want to give up what they've got. We have this, society that's teaching us to want more. That's the basis of consumerism, to create want within us so that we're purchasing and doing things in order to continue to grow the capitalist society, which is obviously a completely different system to when you look at indigenous cultures. And the analogy that comes to mind for me, and this occurred to me while I was at New Earth Meadow with Ben and Sarah, and they were leading things with singing and music. I was reminded of an experience I did at the Confest. We had this experience where there was probably about 10 of us, and we stood up in a circle. And so we're in this circle, I guess, imagine we're all facing the center, and then we turn 90 degrees, and so that you could then put your hands on the shoulders of the person in front of you, and the person behind you had their hands on you. And so we had this circle, and then we closed our eyes and we just started walking. And so it was this incredible experience. You were cutting off this sense that you were used to of sight, and you were having to rely on the sort of hands that were on your shoulder and the shoulder of the person in front of you to guide you. And then you realized that you know, in effect, you were that person. So this beautiful, everybody playing their part, everybody trusting, everybody moving, you know, to me is just this incredible little, how do we take that model? Whereas I think the model we have at the moment, it's almost like, the thought going through my head is, if you take that idea of this circle and the shoulders and we were just walking, if you take that idea even further and imagine actually trying to be in a circle and then try to sit down on the person behind you, sit down on the knees of the person behind you, and the person in front of you is going to sit down on your knees. And so imagine trying to do that transition where you're relying on the person behind you to take your weight, otherwise you're going to fall over. And at the same time, you are providing a platform for the person in front of you to sit down. I'd love to try that experiment sometime. I have to find 10 or 12 people crazy enough to want to try that. So yeah, all of these sorts of thoughts I was experiencing while doing this breathworks, and this idea of both supporting and lifting people. And then once you realize that we are all connected, then you realize you're actually supporting and lifting yourself. And so, you know, it's because we've got to this big mass that we no longer trust, and people, it's easier for sort of people to exploit, and so we then have fear. And that's the other interesting thing that I've been thinking about. I mean, I was watching quite a bit of the World Cup over July, which in itself was an interesting, you know, I think of all of the collective energy and consciousness and thought, me included, that has been following a bunch of guys running around on the grass, kicking a little ball around. And I'm not anti-sport. I love sport. Sport is amazing, but it's just an interesting contrast. You know, that we can unite over those things. And I had also the interesting experience of being so, I guess, tribal, you know, that the sense of attachment to a bunch of people that I don't know, you know, that were representing my nation. And why did I feel such a strong attachment to that compared to any other nation? Because it's just one friggin' planet. And so we've created that nationhood it's an imaginary, you know, differentiation. And you can draw that line anywhere. You can draw it at a state, you can draw it at a suburb, you can draw it at a social club, you can draw it at whatever. And so I don't have an issue with belonging. It's just that at the moment we don't have a hierarchy that has a United Nations that is effective from a planetary perspective. We're not effectively coordinated, and so we have all this war and conflict and unnecessary suffering again. So yeah, World Cup. Was I heading somewhere with that thought? Don't know. Collective consciousness. Oh, I know where I was heading with it. It was the idea of do I know who won the World Cup? It's a sort of a question I felt like asking people. Do you know who won the World Cup? And so I imagine most people would go Spain, which is not the question. The question is, do you know? And so if I was asked the question, who won the World Cup, I would say Spain. But how do I know that Spain won the World Cup? I know because I watched it on a screen and I trust the information that I'm getting from the screen. I don't know anyone that was there. I don't know any of the players. I don't know, I don't have any other means of verifying. I can't ring up someone who was there and say, did Spain really win it? But I don't need to, because I trust the information that I'm getting from the screen. I have faith in there's enough different sources that are giving me that information that I trust it, right? But this whole fake news thing and this whole, artificial intelligence and ability to create fake videos and all that sort of stuff, there will be a point where that trust is broken, and so much of what we need to function as humans in the world at the moment is dependent on trust in the digital aspects of our life, the digital domain. The fact that I use this magic wand to wave in front of things to get fed. And so I don't know that Spain won the World Cup. I believe Spain won the World Cup. And I think we all collectively believe that Spain won the World Cup. But maybe if everybody in my direct experience suddenly believed that that was all a fake, then maybe I wouldn't believe it. So trust. How do we trust in this world coming up with so much uncertainty? And the thing that's been developing for me over probably the past year or so now is just this greater awareness of my body, and particularly my heart region here, that I have a physical, it's like this new sensor that I'm really tuning into. That the thoughts are getting less, the mind is getting less, still a useful tool and instrument, the mind. But when I'm doing something, or when I'm, saying something, or someone says something and I feel it here, it's like popping candy on the tongue. It's this feeling of just this expansion and this popping, and it just sort of rushes in and you feel it. It's a beautiful feeling. But they're the things that I know that I'm alive. And they're the things that I go, right, I want more of that. I'm following that. I'm leaning into that. So that was a lot of rambling without really saying much about what I've actually, well, it is a lot about what I have been doing this last month. So from Uluru, Kings Canyon was amazing, beautiful. I stayed there a few nights. The walk is great. I love that walk. The cliffs are insane. The little Garden of Eden waterhole, beautiful. and everyone there's just a really good vibe. And I was trying to think, I think it's sort of it's sort of mainstream touristy, but it's just that little bit more remote. And yeah, and so it was busy, but it was also very friendly. I ended up having so many conversations and connections with people. And so, yeah, I was talking about that the night when I'd reconnected with Rana, and she had given me the suggestion about Ben and Sarah. So after having that great little evening conversation with Rana, I was on my way back to my van, and I had to stop in at the loo and got chatting to a couple that were sitting there, and I ended up there for an hour and a half. And yeah, they were very generous in their hospitality. Yeah, loved Kings Canyon. From Kings Canyon, I went and drove the Morini Loop up to West MacDonald Ranges. Some beautiful gorges, Red Bank Gorge, Ormiston Gorge, Serpentine Gorge, Simpsons Gap. Yeah, love that place and space. Then sort of restocked in Alice. I didn't get into Alice by choice. I was just sort of, I'm just going to pass through. So I definitely have to go back to Alice at some stage to do justice to experiencing it. And then I pretty much had a couple of big driving days. Stopped off at Devil's Marbles. Pretty much went straight through Tennant Creek. Stayed at a few little roadside places. Got stopped at the border by people checking that I wasn't smuggling fireworks out, because Territory Day, I was in Alice for Territory Day, fireworks going off everywhere. And then I went sort of past Mount Isa into, found this abandoned uranium mine place called Mary Kathleen. Just this massive, it was an old mining town, which they just relocated all the buildings. And so it was sort of this empty suburb. So it's perfect for a free camp caravan park type thing. Loads of space, really spread out. And so I ended up staying there, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 nights, because I was just enjoying the nothingness of it. And sort of reading and getting more into meditation, and yeah, it was great. And then from there I headed down towards Carnarvon Gorge, and I went through Winton, which I didn't know, there's all sorts of dinosaur museums and stuff, and I sort of ummed and ahed, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't feel called to do it, so I missed all of the sort of touristy things. But I had seen in a tour book that I'd picked up at one of the tourist information centres, this one line about a healing circle near a place called Mount White, and that caught my interest. And so it was very off the beaten track, and it was fascinating because I can feel the change in energy when I pulled off, the sort of the main, wasn't a highway, but the main, well, I guess it was a highway, the main road where everyone's sort of doing 110 and there are caravans and trucks and all that sort of stuff. And I pulled off onto this single lane dirt track, 60 kilometers of this single lane dirt track heading away from the road. And I was instantly just lifted by the experience. It was just like, yes, I'm being drawn in. This is the road I'm meant to be traveling. And yeah, I was just very interested because it sort of caught me by surprise. I hadn't realized how much I'd been sucked into, I guess, that energy of being on the beaten track, doing the thing. And I was suddenly so much more aware. of everything, and everything looked so much more beautiful. And kangaroos bouncing along beside me down these little bits of road, and cows in the middle of the road, and emus, and I ended up at this little town called Muddaborough, I think it's called, and it was a bit sort of ghost town in that I sort of pulled up in the middle of the road, and there was like no one around, and they had this fancy looking little tourist centre with no one in it, and it had a dinosaur display, because this is where they'd found this great story of some local farmers finding this dinosaur, and so they'd set up a display for that. And then they also had this cute little cafe, and so I went in and got a coffee and a lamington, best lamington I've had in ages. It was incredibly fresh and beautiful, and there it was full of ladies that were all retirees travelling with their husbands, and all the husbands had gone off fishing, and all the ladies were having coffee. And so a couple of them came and chatted to me, and it was very funny actually, because while telling me about their husbands being off fishing, they were interrogating me to find out, oh, you're single, are you? Okay. And I felt like I was going to be set up with someone. That was fun. So that was this incredible little unexpected delight, which they're the things I get the most joy out of, to just be completely surprised to find in the middle of nowhere this little town that's got this interesting story about dinosaurs. And given I'd sort of chosen to avoid the dinosaur stuff, it was sort of like, yeah, here it is, I'll give it to you on a plate. And yeah, no, so then I from there got even more remote, out to this healing circle, which 99.99999% of the population would turn up and go, what, is that it? Because it is just a bunch of rocks in a circle. But it's what you make of those places for the small little percentage of people that are on a journey like me that want to lean into it. And so I had some beautiful meditations there, and thinking about a lot of special people in my life, and sending them love and healing, and yeah. And these 4 Swedish guys turned up, and we got to chatting, and they camped the night, and I'm close by, and I camped the night, and so I saw them again in the morning. We got even more into chatting, and yeah, it was very cool. You guys, love those guys. I said to them, I'm so excited for the future, because there's people like that give me a lot of hope and faith. Just traveling, curious. They're up for, I suggested a little impromptu ceremony that we did at the healing circle, and they were up for that, and it was great. We took turns sharing it, and then had a big group hug in the middle of this circle. It certainly got me thinking about, what can I do to help continue to, I guess, facilitate experiences like that, and be a part of those experiences. So that place was very significant and special in ways that are hard to articulate, but it was very cool. And then Carnarvon Gorge, I enjoyed. I was a little underwhelmed at first, I'll have to be honest, because I guess I'd heard a lot of good things about it. I had a lot of hype, and I was sort of like, maybe I'd been a bit spoiled having been through the West Macdonald Ranges and some incredible gorges. But it did warm on me, and it was, yeah, no, there's some beautiful little spots there. And ended up at a unofficial free camp by the side of a road in an abandoned quarry, and got chatting to everybody that was there, which was fantastic, which again was this nice little mix of some older retirees and young single guy from the US out going to the reef, and yeah, good little mix and conversation. And then from there, I went via Gavidgen for a little personal reconnection, and then went to Yeppoon out past Rockhampton. And so that was nice to be back on the ocean after a few months out in the outback. And the highlight was just this trying to continue to trust my instincts and intuition and just follow the flow of energy. And anyway, I ended up just driving down the road, seeing this sign to say lookout, and following the sign to a lookout, and got chatting to Lani, who was sitting at the lookout. And it is places like that when you need to sort of clear your mind a bit, or, you know, up for a chat with a like-minded soul, there are certain places, I guess, that attract. And so we had an amazing little 10 or 15 minute conversation, which was very special as well. And she gave me some good suggestions of where to go for coffee. And so the next morning I went and had a coffee at the Waterline, I think it was called. And what made it special was my state of mind. So it's very hard to describe what made it special, but it was a nice location, and that really simple. I can't remember. I ordered like a coffee and, I don't know, some sort of toast or mushrooms or egg or something. I can't remember what it was. But just those moments that you feel such deep, deep, deep gratitude and respect, and just, wow, I am so fortunate to be enjoying this simple moment. Yeah. Love those moments, and there's so many of them at the moment, which is beautiful. Yeppoon, and then I've cruised down. I went via 1770 and Agnes Waters, which was cool. I enjoyed being there. Nice vibe. And then I sort of, cruised along. I'm now at Noosa North Shore. I've spent a bit of time here on the Sunshine Coast. So the story of meeting Louisa. There's a whole backstory about what led me into van life, which I'll try to cover quickly. I just need to pick a starting point. I'm going to start. I'm going to start with COVID, 2020. So that was a pretty tumultuous year for me personally, as well as for the planet, I guess. I had been running my own business and the contracts all dried up, so I shut down the business and I became an employee again. I went back to being a project manager working for a software company. But more significantly, I ended the 5-year relationship that I was in. And I started to explore permaculture and started, I guess, formulating a long-term plan to almost just be a hermit out on my property. And so it was actually through permaculture that I was at a perma bee, a working bee at one of my neighbours' farms out where I had my property, and met this young lady that was living and travelling in a camper van. And it just sort of blew my mind. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have a job? You don't know where you're going to be? You know, you're just following the flow of energy and exploring. I'm like, you know, is that allowed? Are we allowed? You're allowed to do that? That just sounds completely wrong. So I was both challenged and fascinated and intrigued and loved it. And this lady and I, like the week after we'd met at the Perma Bee doing gardening, we went on a bushwalker hike together, and just the most incredible, generous soul, and listening and understanding and making suggestions. And I ended up telling my friends about her, saying it's like she's an angel that had been sent to come and tell me that I'm an angel. And so, you know, and you can interpret the word angel in many different ways. It can just be a mindset, or it can be some sort of divine thing. Either of those things apply. And so that was this seed of this idea of van life that was planted. Because at the time I was in sort of the progress of planning to build out of my property and, you know, as I say, become a recluse. But she'd sort of opened my eyes and also my heart, just this, well, maybe I do have love to give. Maybe it's this heavy introversion that I have is also, there is a bit of an extrovert in me. It's just got to find the right people that are going to help energize me. And so eventually that seed turned into me ordering a camper van, which turned into me getting a camper van, which turned into me traveling. And I just had this, you know, sense calling, this thing that I knew I wanted to get out there, but I'd been avoiding it a bit because traveling with my 2 big dogs was challenging. But eventually I just bought the bullet and I said, well, just try it. Just do a 2-week trial with the dogs, see how you go. And so I did it, jumped in the van, started driving, got to the first corner, went, do I go left, do I go right? Oh, raining to the left, I go right. And I just that's how I traveled. And that 2 weeks ended up becoming a 6-week trip because I just kept extending it because it was so good. Anyway, I ended up putting the dogs in at a kennel and was at National Park in Gundabooka and processing all this stuff, and had an eagle come and, I mean, there were so many eagles there, but this eagle come and swoop me, and I'm trying to decide at what point I declare that I'm in danger here. This guy is like just meters away from me, and he's like, oh my God, he's seriously thinking about attacking me. So I wonder what he's after. He's coming out of the sun. No, he's decided I'm not worth the effort. but I knew I was this sense of wanting to reach out to people and try to connect with them, but also this fear, this insecurity, this, you know, are you sure about this? And so I posted this video, the first time I'd sort of posted a video in a sort of more public thing. It wasn't completely public. It was a Solo Travelling Australia Facebook group.
G'day. This is really not my thing, but I guess this is what you do when you're old and ugly enough and reach my age. I guess the motto that's been driving me a bit recently is that when I fill my heart with love and I be authentic, then I've got nothing to fear. The universe will connect me with the people I need or that need me. And so with that in mind, I'm just putting this call out to solo travellers to say, hi, I'm currently in the outback New South Wales and travelling around and love to sit around a campfire and have a good chat. So if you're in need of one of those, reach out to me.
And I posted this video and it included the message that has been my mantra for a while about fill my heart with love, be authentic, there's nothing to fear, the universe will connect you with the people you need or that need you. And it was a lot more nervous and immature than that, I think. But that was the message. And there's a whole incredible story about Camille, which I'll go into another time. But the short part about it was the relevant bit, interesting bit, the coincidental bit, is that I actually met Camille here on the Sunshine Coast. I'm pretty sure it was 24th of July, 2025. Well, we reconnected. After we'd sort of swapped some messages, we reconnected there. And so it was the anniversary of that day, and I'm still in touch with Camille. I've been talking to her about it. And anyway, that original post that I'd made in March 2025, there was a few people that commented on it, and one of them was a lady called Louisa who commented back then, and we'd sort of swapped a few messages. And a year ago, when I was in the Sunshine Coast and ended up connecting with Camille, I had reached out to Louisa, but it just didn't line up. We couldn't connect. And then here I was a year later, so I just reached out again. We hadn't messaged for a year. I said, I'm in the neighbourhood, you want to get a coffee? And she said yes, and so we went and had a coffee. And so this story, I love this story for me because it's such all of these big, sort of emotions and feelings and changes and pivots through life, all of these things that exploring what it means to be authentic. Like, it's an easy thing to say, fill your heart with love and be authentic. There's nothing to fear. The universe will connect you with the people you need or that the people you need or that need you. Morning. But what does it actually mean to be authentic? And particularly when you're going through a period of growth, the boundary of who you are and what you identify with is expanding and changing and growing. And so authenticity means trying different things. And, how much vulnerability do I share? How much woo-woo do I believe? Yeah. And so for me, when I have these experiences that just keep filling my heart with joy and going, yeah, this is it. You're on the right track. This is, the future is unknown, and I can have big dreams and visions and, hopes and desires, or whatever you want to call it, for the future. Even predictions, and some of them are pessimistic, you know, and some of them could well just be my need to feel important, my need to feel like I've got a place. And so I imagine a future where I get to be the hero in the story. Well, why not? I'm allowed to do that, as long as I don't attach to it, as long as I don't feel like my life is a misery and a ruin, and if that doesn't come to fruition. But be open to it. It could be. I mean, why not? Let's invent the future that we want, that excites us. So that was super cool to meet Louisa and to have her send me a little audio note reflecting on the experience.
Some days arrive with no expectations at all. 12 months ago, I left a comment on a stranger's post because his words resonated with me. We exchanged a few messages, appreciated each other's perspectives, and life simply carried on. Yesterday, he reached out. He happened to be passing through my area and asked if I'd like to meet for a coffee. Ordinarily, I might have talked myself out of it. We knew almost nothing about each other beyond the fact that he was travelling Australia solo. But something felt easy about saying yes. What I expected to be a quick coffee turned into an entire day of conversation. There was no awkwardness, no pressure to impress, no need to explain who we were before we spoke about what mattered. We talked about life, about connection and disconnection, blame and accountability, love and fear, energy, trauma, and healing. The paths we've walked and the ones we're still trying to find. It reminded me that trauma isn't a competition. Pain doesn't need to earn its place by being bigger than someone else's. Every person's experience is real to them, and sometimes the kindest thing we can offer isn't advice. It's simply our willingness to listen without judgment. There's something incredibly freeing about being heard by someone who has no preconceived ideas about you. No history, no expectations, no presence. It felt less like meeting a stranger and more like reconnecting with someone I'd somehow known before, whether through shared experiences, quiet synchronicities, or simply because two people were willing to meet each other with openness. So as the sun began to set, I realised we'd spent the entire day talking. Neither of us had arrived with an agenda. Just two people sharing coffee, stories, and a little piece of life's journey. So, Mike, thank you. Whether our paths cross again or not, I'll remember the conversation more than the coffee. Sometimes one genuine connection, however brief, stays with us far longer than we expect. Maybe that's the lesson I was meant to learn today. To remain open, to trust my intuition a little more, to remember that the universe has an interesting way of introducing us to the people we need exactly when I need them.
Take a moment. Take a moment to realize life is happening now. And there's so much beauty. There's so much beauty. So, switch off, unplug, get some earth under your feet, feel some water, live life, and love it. It's not a rehearsal. It's happening now. Go enjoy it.